Hello, Soul Tribe. I'm KamalaDevi, and it's an honor to be with you at this festival, and it's a unique opportunity to have it be translated in Estonian. And the title of the festival is Sex Magic for Manifestation.
Tere hinge kogukond, mul on hea meel osaleda sellel festivalil ja sellel festivalil on väga põnev nimi Ühenduses ja mina annan siis töötuba Sex Magic for Manifestation ehk seksmaagia manifestatsiooniks.
Sex magic is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. So I'm going to share both personal stories as well as a very specific, like 7-step process of how to, so that you can do the practice yourself.
Seksmaagia on väga südamelähedane mulle ja ma jagan teile selle loengu jooksul oma personaalset lugu ja siis 7-astmelist tehnikat, mida te saate ise kasutada.
So a little background for those who haven't met me. I'm the author of Sacred Sexual Healing, and it's actually the subtitle is Sex Magic for the Shaman method of sex magic, which is what we'll be covering.
Natukene minu taustast. Mina olen siis püha seksuaalse maagia raamatu autor.
So I'm co-author with Baba Des Nichols, who is the founder of the ISTA, the International School of Temple Arts, and I'm also a lead faculty for ISTA.
Ja ma olen Baba Desiga kaasautor ja samuti olen õpetaja ISTA koolis, seksmaagia koolis.
So in addition, I will say for those who've seen the American TV show called Polyamory, Married and Dating, that my family was on 2 seasons of a sexy reality show.
Et veel tahaksin lisada, et kes on näinud Ameerika tõsielusarja polügaamiast ja kohtingutest, siis minu perekond oli seal mitmes hooajas, mängis kaasa.
And finally, I also want to say of the many things that I do, the biggest challenge and the deepest teacher for me is my son. I have a 14-year-old boy, and I've been married for 20 years, and I'm a student of life itself.
Ja lõpuks ma tahan veel öelda, et minu kõige suurem õpetaja on tegelikult minu 14-aastane poeg ja samal ajal on ta ka minu kõige suurem väljakutse minu elus ja ma olen 20 aastat abielus.
So I want to start with the topic of sex magic. The simplest definition would be anytime that we infuse our sexual energy, our orgasmic energy or our desire with our intentions or our goals.
Ja kõigepealt ma sissejuhatuseks sellesse seksmaagia teemasse lihtsalt defineeriksin, mis see tähendab. Et see tähendab siis seda, kui me seksuaalenergia ühendame oma eesmärkidega.
And I wanted to say welcome to those of you that are just joining us. And I wanted to also just check in on the recording, which is if the spotlight is on both me and the translator before we begin a little.
Ja ma tahaksin öelda kõigile tere, kes sisenevad ja siis tahaksin teada, et kas lindistamise spotlight on mõlema peal, nii minu kui tõlkija peal.
So
it should be, yeah.
Okay, good. I'll let you sort that out. And before we dive in, since we do have some people here, I want to welcome you to ask your questions and participate later in the program.
Ja enne kui me edasi läheme, siis ma tahaksin teid kõiki julgustada, et te osaleksite selles vestluses, küsiksite ja räägiksite kaasa.
The first ingredient, the first step we're going to speak to is intention. And then I'm going to go over 7 other steps. So start with intention.
Esimene osa, millest me räägime, on siis taotlus ja seal on 7 osa.
Second is sacred ritual.
Teine on püha rituaal.
Third is holding space.
Kolmas on ruumi hoidmine.
Then activating the kundalini.
Siis on kundalini aktiveerimine.
Merging.
Ja siis on sulandumine.
Affirmations.
Afirmatsioonid.
And then the final piece is it starts with an N in English. And I'm not going to tell you what it stands for until we get there.
Ja viimane on siis miski, mis algab N-tähega, aga ma ei ütle teile ennem, kui me jõuame sinna.
So the 7 steps is an acronym, and it's SHAMAN, spelling shaman.
Can you spell again? What were the letters?
If you spell shaman, SHAMAN.
Shaman, jah, okei. Ja see on siis šamaan, see viimane. Ja sellel on oma tähendus.
So before we get into the acronym, the intention is the first ingredient to all magic. We always want to begin with a prayer or an end in mind.
Ja enne kui me jõuame selle akronüümini, siis kõigepealt me tahame alustada maagiast ja selle maagia oluline osa on palve.
The reason that sex magic has been so controversial through the years and many different cultures, it's not just like Christianity and Puritanism, but also the yogis and the Tibetans have been very afraid of sex magic, and I'm going to tell you why.
See põhjus, miks seksmaagia on nii vastuoluline olnud mitte ainult kristlaste ja puritaanlaste hulgas, vaid ka joogide ja tiibetlaste hulgas. Ma kohe räägin teile, miks.
It's often confused with black magic, which is when we do a type of a manipulation of energy that impacts another person. And then it becomes a question of, is it that person's will? Are we interfering with their will? Because we don't want to use our power in a way that misuses or abuses other people's consent.
See põhjus on selles, et tavaliselt see segatakse ära musta maagiaga, kus me kasutame teise inimese tahet ja teeme tema tahte vastaselt.
So if we're going to take our dreams, our hopes, our desires, and infuse that with our erotic energy and our fantasy and our sensuality, and we're doing that with a partner, we want to make sure that that partner is in full consent to what it is that you're manifesting.
Nii et kui me võtame oma soovid ja unistused ja sulandame selle oma erootilise, sensuaalse energiaga, siis me tahame kindlasti, et meie partner teaks, mida me manifesteerime või mida me soovime.
Sex magic can also be practiced alone, but it has to start with the intention that this is for the highest good of all, not just myself, but everyone involved, and maybe even take a vow of do no harm.
Seksmaagiat võib teha ka üksi, aga see peab alati algama sooviga, et see on kõigi ja kõige suuremaks hüvanguks.
So when it's taught in various occult traditions, they often have the teaching that only wish for that which is not personal, like in the highest, not just the highest good of all, maybe it's for the environment or for all sentient beings, but don't make a wish for yourself.
Kui seda algselt õpetati erinevates kaltides või kogukondades, siis seda sooviti tavaliselt midagi, mis on kõigi suuremaks hüvanguks, teiste hüvanguks, mitte midagi, mis on personaalne.
And as a radical, non-dual, modern Dakini or Tantrika, I do welcome personal pleasures, and I don't shame, you know, anybody wanting something for themselves, including their own health or their own money or their own pleasure.
Ja mina radikaalse takiinina tervitan kõiki isiklikke naudinguid ja soove ja ei häbista seda, kui me soovime, ma ei tea, raha või tervist või midagi head iseendale.
Oftentimes, if somebody sets an intention that is not in the highest good, or it's not a positive one, it will actually hurt themselves and it will drain or leak their own energy. So we want to make sure that our intentions are ones that are enlivening to us, not something that we feel bad about. Otherwise, we're the ones who will feel the effect.
Ja tihti, kui keegi taotluse seab, mis pole suuremaks hüvanguks, siis see teeb meile liiga, võtab meilt energiat ära ja me peame vaatama, et meie soovid oleksid meid ennast ka elustavad.
So I'm going to give you some examples of intentions that you might choose in order to do this 7-step practice.
Ja ma toon mõned näited mingitest taotlustest, mida te võite valida selleks, et teha seda 7-astmelist teekonda.
I wish for healing or well-being of my body.
Ma soovin oma keha tervenemist.
I want to earn $100,000 this year in exchange for environmental friendly work.
Ma tahan teenida $100,000 aastas, tehes midagi sellist, mis on kasulik ka keskkonnale.
I want to manifest a soulmate or a life partner.
Ma soovin manifesteerida hingesugulast või elukaaslast.
I want to land my dream house.
Ma tahan leida oma unistuste maja.
Any of these intentions can be magnified if you say, you know, I want to land a dream house for the benefit of all who enter, or if you dedicate the intention to doing good.
Kõik need sinu soovid on väga külge tõmbavad, kui seal taga on see taotlus teha head.
And then you also say, may this or something even greater come in the highest good of all.
Ja siis sa ütled ka, tulgu see või isegi midagi suuremat ja paremat kõigi suuremaks hüvanguks.
There's also another incantation. It sounds like, if this is in God's will, then make it so.
Ja siis on ka selline näiteks viis, et kui see on jumalate soov, siis olgu see nii.
So take a moment and self-reflect. If you're going to supercharge something that you really want in your life, what would you like to dedicate your sex magic practice to? Go ahead and jot it down if you're listening, or just meditate on that for a moment.
Nii et võta korraks ruum iseenda peegeldamiseks. Kui sa tahaksid midagi laadida, mida sa soovid, siis mis see oleks, mida sa soovid oma ellu kutsuda?
Now that has been crystallized, you can make an invitation for the practice, which is once you've decided what you want to do, you can start the preparations for the deeper magic.
Ja nüüd, kui see on sinu jaoks selgeks saanud, siis sa saad teha taotluse praktikaks, kuidas seda saada.
The first step is S for sacred ritual. And I want to say that.
esimene samm on S, püha rituaal.
We do rituals all day, every day. Maybe brushing your teeth is a ritual, maybe cooking your food is a ritual, but what makes a ritual sacred?
Me teeme rituaale iga päev, et kui me peseme oma hambaid või valmistame toitu, aga mis teeb ühe rituaali pühaks?
Whenever we bring presence and our divinity to any ritual, it elevates it from the mundane to the sacred.
Kui toome selle rituaali juurde kohaloleku ja jumalikkuse, siis tõstab selle asja justkui sellisest tavalisusest välja jumalikuks pühaks.
So to do a sacred ritual of sex magic, you may want to create a temple space, lighting candles and incense and maybe flowers, and just making a beautiful space to bring more presence to the ritual.
Selleks, et teha püha rituaali seksmaagiaga, võid sa luua sellise ilusa õhkkonna, süüdates küünlad ja pannes võib-olla lilled altarile.
You can go as elaborate as finding a sacred ceremonial ground, or you can go as minimalist and as simple as just lying in your bed in the morning and just taking a few breaths.
Sa võid minna natukene nagu läheneda suuremalt ja minna mingisse pühasse kohta või teha siis seda minimalistlikumalt, võib-olla lamades oma voodis kodus.
The last thing I'll say about making the ritual sacred is that it has to have personal meaning to you. So if you read a book and it tells you to go through all these steps and motions and it doesn't resonate, then it's not going to be sacred. It has to have personal meaning.
Ja viimane, mis ma selle kohta ütlen, on see, et sellel peab olema personaalne tähendus sinu jaoks. Kui see ei tekita sinus mingit emotsiooni või tunnet, et siis see ei ole personaalne võib-olla, sa ei soovi seda.
Now, H is for holding space.
H-täht on siis holding space ehk ruumi hoidmine.
Before we begin the ceremony, we want to actually do a deep check-in with ourselves or with our partners.
Ja enne kui me alustame selle tseremooniaga, me tahame teha iseenda ja partneriga siukse check-in'i sissevaatamise.
So you can do this ritual as a solo practice. You can do it with one partner, or you could do it with a whole group, as I have done on New Year's. Instead of setting New Year's goals, we sometimes do a whole great group sex magic ritual at the strike of midnight.
Ja sa võid teha seda soolopraktikana või teha seda terve grupiga, et mina näiteks aastavahetusel keskööl täpselt teen terve grupiga, nii et me koos manifesteerime.
Holding space involves asking, what are your fears? What are your boundaries? And then, of course, what are your desires? And this is where you share the intention that you set.
Ja ruumi hoidmine tähendab küsimine, mis on sinu hirmud, mis on sinu piirid ja mis on see taotlus, mida sa soovid.
The boundaries may include, I'm on my period and I'm really low energy. I have to take a tampon out, or a boundary could be I hurt my back, so let's not do a position that's going to hurt. It could be unplugging the internet and turning off the phone and saying no outside distractions. There's many different kinds of boundaries.
Ja piirid võivad olla näiteks, et mul on periood ja mul on natukene madal energia või ma tegin oma seljale viga ja mingid positsioonid mulle ei sobi, või siis, et lülitame telefonid välja ja ärme võta mingit välist segavat faktorit sisse.
Once we understand what the boundaries and the fears then it allows us to be more free to bring the magic in.
Siis kui me mõistame, mis piirid ja hirmud meil on, siis see lubab seda maagiat rohkem sisse tuua.
The fears, there's a trick when you're working with fears. You want to not push them away, not say, oh, don't be afraid. Instead, it's like welcome the fears. We understand them and that the love is bigger. We hold space that's bigger than the fears.
Ja trikk hirmudega on see, et me ei lükka neid ära või me ei taha neist vabaneda, vaid me tervitame ja mõistame neid ja hoiame neile armastavat ruumi, mis on suurem kui need hirmud.
So the key to holding space is giving permission for whatever resistance wants to arise, giving permission to it, addressing that ahead of time. That way, when the ritual begins, we can be really present and not distracted.
Ruumi hoidmise võti on see, et me anname luba kõigele, mis üles tuleb, nii et me ei oleks segatud, kui miski üles tuleb, et me teame, et ükskõik mida võib üles kerkida.
The A is for activating the Kundalini.
A on Kundalini aktiveerimine.
So this practice takes the whole body all the way up, all the way down, and we want to use the entire body temple.
See praktika võtab kogu sinu keha ja me tahame kogu oma keha templit kasutada alt üles välja.
This is the phase that's more like foreplay, where we start to raise the energy, and it includes movement, breath, sound.
Ja see on justkui nagu eelmängu faas, mis sisaldab endas liikumist, häält ja hingamist. Tõstame energiat.
So it can look all kinds of different ways. If you happen to be like a Kundalini yoga master, you can do your Kundalini practices. If it happens to be that you want to just like eye gaze and breathe together, or maybe you want to sound the chakras, as long as it activates the whole body, then it's activating the Kundalini.
Ja see võib olla ükskõik missugune, kui sa oled võib-olla Kundalini jooga meister, siis sa tahad võib-olla raputada ennast või võib-olla sa tahad silma vaadata või häälida nii, et kogu kehas energia läheb tööle. Oluline on, et kogu kehas energia käivitub.
When you're practicing with a partner,
kui harjutad partneriga,
tune into what's happening between it's not just your chakra and their chakra, but what's happening in the communication between your chakras. There's a dance of the energy that's getting opened between, where I begin and where you end. There's a transpersonal space.
Ja kui sa teed seda partneriga, siis tuuni, mis toimub teie tšakrate vahel. Ja seal on nagu mingi ruum, mis avaneb teie tšakrate vahel, kui nad omavahel suhtlevad.
And similar with when you're practicing in a group, there's always an energy that is more than you could be alone. And you want to put your energy, you want to put your attention on the transpersonal, what's coming through that's bigger than you.
Ja kui te olete grupis, siis alati on mingi energia, mis on palju rohkem, kui sa oled üksi. See on mingi transpersonaalne energia, mis tuleb läbi selle grupi läbi.
When it's, with yourself, it's a practice of how do I arouse myself so much that I can get my ego, my identity, my head out of the way so I can come through.
Ja kui teed seda endaga, siis on küsimus, et kuidas ma erutan end nii palju, et ma saan oma ego ja identiteedi eest ära, et see saaks tulla läbi.
It's just a clarification. It's so that the God force can come through, so that something bigger can move through something wiser, can move through. I dedicate this body as a channel to be used by a greater energy.
Et see on selgitus, et Jumala vägi justkui saaks tulla läbi või mingi suurem jõud või suurem pilt. Kuidas ma saaksin anda selle energia täielikult selle suurema käsutusse.
And often we want to master the solo practice first. So raise our own Kundalini before approaching another, to do it in dyadic practice, and mastering that before you do group practice.
Ja tihti me tahame tegelikult alustada kõigepealt soolopraktikaga, saada selles meistriks, siis me saame minna paari praktika juurde ja siis juba grupi praktika juurde.
Which may be good news if you're in a pandemic lockdown and you only have yourself to practice with anyway.
Et võib-olla see on hea uudis, et kui sa oled pandeemia lockdownis, et siis saad seda üksi praktiseerida.
M is for merging.
M on sulandumine.
Merging is, it doesn't just have to be like penis and vagina, the actual physical act, but it's a dissolving of self into another.
Ja sulandumine ei tähenda vaid seda, et peenis ja vagiina saavad kokku, vaid see on iseenda sulandumine teisesse.
And this is important to acknowledge that it can be done, between women, between men, transgender, queer, it doesn't matter. It's not about your physical body parts fitting together. It's about two becoming one.
Ja tähtis on mõista, et seda võivad teha omavahel nii naised koos kui mehed koos, et ei ole vaja, et erinevad kehaosad sobiksid kokku. Et see on lihtsalt, kuidas üksteisesse sulanduda, üheks saada.
Now, if you're one and you're practicing solo, this is where one might merge with their hermaphroditic soul, or the experience of the inner, I have an external feminine body, I might merge with my inner masculine.
Ja kui oled üksi, praktiseerid üksi, siis on see, et sa sulandud võib-olla oma sisemise mehelikkusega.
So it's a dissolving into the source code of God, Goddess.
See on justkui sulandumine allikakoodi jumalannasse ja jumalasse.
Now, different occult practices, different occult schools have particular prescriptions about what to do at point of orgasm.
Ja erinevad kaltkoolid on andnud erinevaid selgitusi, mida teha siis selle energiaga, kui see tõuseb.
I'm not going to be prescriptive about exactly, what position you're in or how to hold it, but I will speak to some of the different styles.
Ja mina ei ütle täpselt, mis asendis sa pead olema või kuidas seda hoida, aga ma räägin mingitest stiilidest.
Ultimately, the practice has to be authentic to who you are and the one that feels most aligned with or empowering to the individual. So it can be a very personal choice what kind of sex magic you resonate with.
Lõpuks peab see praktika olema väga autentne ja resoneeruma sellega, kus sina oled, et see praktika sobiks sinuga.
Some schools teach that the orgasm itself is the holy moment when the veil drops and we can bring the unmanifest into the manifest.
Mõned koolid õpetavad, et orgasm on ise see, kui what drops?
Like the veil between
worlds. Veil. Et kui nagu eesriie nagu langeb ja me saame seda manifestatsiooni nagu luua.
And some schools teach that it's just the desire itself. And this includes the famous book, Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill, who wrote that book, teaches that sexual desire is the fastest way to become rich, faster than thinking.
Ja teised arvavad jällegi, et see on vaid selline iha iseenesest ja see tuleneb Napoleon Hilli raamatust Think and Grow Rich, et mõtle ja kasva rikkaks, kus tema seda kirjeldab niimoodi.
And some schools like the Aleister Crowley School actually, have specific insignias that could be drawn with blood and semen, and that high sex magic happens at a time when the female's on her period and the male needs to fuse his seed, the white into the red.
Ja teised koolid, jälle näiteks Aleister Crowley kool, räägib sellest, et veri ja seeme peavad omavahel kohtuma, et mees peab oma seemne panema vere sisse.
Ultimately, merging is when we merge not only the individual self into the whole self, but we merge fully with the intention that's set. So there's a sense of the intention is not away from us, it is us, and we are not separate from it. So we're vibrating the intention in the moment of the merging.
Ja lõpuks tähendab see seda, et ühinemine ei ole vaid see, et kuidas et see on nagu see, et me taotlusega ühineme ja see pole meist miskit eraldi see taotlus, vaid me saame selle taotlusega kokku, et meie olemegi see taotlus.
So if you've seen the movie The Secret, it often talks about, no, it's not think and grow rich, it's feel and grow rich. And there's a lot of talk about how you want to feel as if what you're wanting, law of attraction, what you're wanting to attract feels like it's here now.
Kui sa oled lugenud või näinud filmi Saladus, siis sa tead, et seal räägitakse just sellest tundmisest, et see ei ole mitte mõtle ja kasva rikkaks, vaid tunne ja kasva rikkaks justkui.
But the secret behind the movie The Secret is that the deepest kind of feeling is actually orgasmic bliss. That is like rocket fuel. Orgasm is the highest pleasure potential that a human body is capable of.
Ja saladus selle filmi taga on tegelikult see, et sügavaim tunne ongi orgastiline bliss ehk õndsus ja see on kõige kõrgem selline vibratsioon või kogemus, mida me saame, nauding, mida me saame inimesena kogeda.
They've done MRI scans of brains at point of orgasm, and it's like a lightning shower where everything is lit up, and we're capable of learning and rewiring so much faster when we're in that peak state of orgasm.
Ja nad on teinud MRI pilte ajust orgasmi hetkel ja see on justkui selline valgusplahvatus, mis ajus toimub, kui me saame orgasmi ja me oleme siis valmis palju kiiremini kõike õppima ja omandama näiteks.
So imagine in that moment of the God force being activated that you're focused on something that is in the highest good for yourself and others.
Ja kujuta ette seda hetke, kui see Jumala vägi on sinu sees aktiveeritud ja sa oled ka mingi kõrgema hüvangu nimel tegutsemas.
Now contrast that with the typical like, I just need a release, or I need to have sex so that I feel self-worthy, or maybe I'm fantasizing about an ex-lover or some pornography.
Ja too kontrastiks siia kõrvale see, et ma vajan mingit vabanemist, et end hästi tunda või võib-olla kujutan ette mingit ex-partnerit või mõtlen porno peale seksides.
Take a moment to reflect on what am I usually thinking about during point of orgasm? And this may be uncomfortable, but self-assess and say, what is it that I'm energizing all the time with my sexual energy?
Ja võta üks hetk, et peegeldada iseendas, mis on see, mille peale ma tavaliselt mõtlen sel hetkel, kui ma saan orgasmi. Mis on see, mida ma tegelikult kogu aeg loon orgasmi saades? Millised mõtted mul on?
Now, you don't have to be chanting Tibetan mantras for world peace, but imagine you could bring more awareness and up level where your mind goes and where your heart goes at that moment.
Ja sa ei pea Tiibeti mantraid maailma rahuks chantima, aga sa võid tuua rohkem teadlikkust sellesse, kuhu sinu mõte läheb ja mida sa lood sellega.
Some sex magic teachings, including the one I practice, does not require conscious focus of the intention at the moment. It's a super conscious, soft focus. So you don't have to work so hard, you just have to surrender more.
Ja osa seksmaagia õpetusi, ka see, mida mina praktiseerin, ei vaja sellist tugevat kontsentreerumist, vaid pigem sellist alistumist sellele, mis on. Sa ei pea fokusseerima väga tugevalt.
So often I'll set the intention with my partner during the holding space, and then I get into the erotic trance, raising my vibration and coming even into the climax, and my mind isn't doing anything but surrendering to the journey.
Ja tavaliselt ma teen taotluse ruumi hoidmise ajal, annan selle partnerile teada ja siis ma lähen erootilisse transsi ja võib-olla isegi kliimaksini.
This is my cat Kabuki.
See on kass Kabuki.
The next step is for affirmations.
Ja A on afirmatsioonid.
Now, after the climax, there's a very sweet, tender, soft yin space that we go into.
Ja peale kliimaksit on väga pehme, õrn, yin energia, kuhu me läheme sisse.
This is a receptive time in which we want to, like a cat, just sort of cuddle, get stroked and down regulate, to come down from the high of the climax, if we choose to climax.
Ja see on selline vastuvõttev aeg, kus tahame kallistusi või puudutusi, et maha laadida see, mis me võib-olla kogesime, kui me kliimaksini jõudsime.
Now, climax is not required for the potency of the sex magic ritual. Depends on the different schools. Some schools say yes, but I advocate that it is about the journey of the intention and not any particular goal.
Ja kliimaks ei ole vajalik seksmaagia jaoks, ka seal koolis, kus mina õpin, et selles koolkonnas, mida mina nagu kasutan, ei ole seda vaja.
But there's always going to be a down regulation period where we want to be in the receptive yin.
Aga seal alati on siiski see maha laadimise periood, kus me tahame olla selles vastuvõtvas naiselikus energias, yin energias.
In the sweetness of this mystery, we want to listen to the heart, listen to the vibrations of what's possible as a result of setting this intention.
Ja selle müsteeria magusas hetkes me tahame kuulata oma südant, kuulatada oma vibratsioone, mis on võimalik seoses selle taotlusega, mis ma tegin.
It's a little bit like the saying that that prayer is like calling God on the phone, and meditation is like you're listening and God calls you.
See on justkui nagu ütlemine, et palve on jumalale helistamine ja meditatsioon on kuulamine, millal Jumal helistab sulle.
So in the beginning, the intention, you're stating this is my will, and then in the affirmation, God is stating this is, this is the what's in the highest good. This is this is the mandate or the operating instructions or the inspiration.
Taotlust seades sa ütled, et see on minu soov ja pärast siis Jumal ütleb sulle, et see on see inspiratsioon või see, mis saab tulla läbi, mis on nagu kõiksusega kooskõlas.
So this is a time at the end of the ceremony where you can begin to affirm, that I am living in my dream temple, or my soulmate is on the way, or I'm feeling the abundance of the $100,000 I made this year.
Ja siis selle lõpuosas on see aeg, tseremoonia lõpus, kus ma kinnitan, et ma elan juba selles unistuste kodus või teenin juba seda raha või minu hingesugulane on juba minu poole teel.
Oftentimes this can be spontaneous and it arises between lovers after lovemaking, when you affirm your wishes for one another or you see each other in the highest version of themselves.
Ja vahest võib olla see spontaanne, kui te ütlete oma soove peale armatsemist ja see tuleb nagu mingist kõrgemast kohast iseenesest.
Now, are you curious what N stands for, the last step?
Kas te olete põnevil, mida see N, viimane samm tähendab?
Next steps.
Jah, N tähendab järgmised sammud, next steps.
When we pray for something like, I want to win the lottery, we actually have to take action, like buy a lottery ticket.
Ja kui me palvetame millegi pärast, et näiteks ma tahan võita loteriiga, siis me peame tegema järgmise sammu, näiteks ostma loteriipileti.
So in my school of sex magic, it's not complete. The ceremony is not complete unless you actually take operating instructions and an action in the direction of the reality you're creating.
Ja minu seksmaagia koolis ei ole see tseremoonia lõplik, kui sa ei tee ühtegi sammu selleks, et seda taotlust ellu viia.
So Sai Baba says, take one step towards God and God takes 20 steps towards you. This is taking that one step.
Ja Sai Baba ütleb näiteks, et võta üks samm lähemale Jumalale ja Jumal teeb 20 sammu lähemale sinule. Et see ongi see sammu võtmine, tegemine.
I have another teacher, Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist Way. She says, you can pray to catch the bus, but if you see the bus going down your street, you better run like hell.
Ja teine minu õpetaja Julia Cameron, kes on kirjutanud Loovuse teel, ütleb, et sa võid, how she says?
You can pray to catch the bus, but if the bus is running down your street, you better run like hell.
Et sa võid palvetada, et sa saaksid selle bussi kätte, aga kui sa näed, et buss sõidab juba mäest alla, et siis sa pead jooksma nagu põrgu.
So it is a co-creation. We want to be empowered, especially as shamans, we recognize that we create our reality. We don't just, it's not just about visualizing and it stops there. It has to come all the way through to our actions.
Ja see koosloomine on see, et me tahame olla väestatud see on see, et me loome oma reaalsuse ja see tähendab seda, et me peame tegema samme, et see ei ole vaid visualiseerimine.
So that is the shaman method of sex magic, which has multiple variations. And I invite you to do the practice. I'll ask questions and answers so that you feel really empowered to do the practice in the most authentic way.
Ja see on siis šamaani seksmaagia meetod ja sellel on eri variatsioone, aga ma küsin ja vastan selleks, et sa saaksid aru, et sa teeksid seda just omale sobival autentsel viisil.
I'm open to questions.
Nii et ma olen avatud küsimusteks.
And for those of you who are watching on the replay, I'm going to invite you to, send an email or a text to get in touch with us through the festival or at KamalaDevi.com so that we can answer your questions.
Ja need, kes vaatavad lindistust, väga julgustan teid emaili kirjutama või vaatama minu kodulehte KamalaDevi.com, et te saaksite siis ühendust võtta minuga, kui teil tekib küsimusi.
But I'm sure Mara-Liis is going to channel a question for you right now.
Ja mina nüüd pean teile siis küsimuse kanaldama. Kas kellelgi on mingeid küsimusi?
Jaa.
Kas tahad inglise keeles äkki küsida?
Okay. Yeah, I would ask if it's always easy, like if we start practicing like with the partners, it's a good practice to start with small honesty, but if I manifest, would you give us some small what to start, because just practicing with small 100 times and then go. What would be the kind of way the manifesting?
Great, Mara-Liis.
Et see oli siis küsimus, et kuidas alustada väikeste sammudega, jah? Sain ma õigesti aru? Et kui nagu väikseid sammu tees, et mida sa soovitaksid, mis need väiksed sammud võiks olla?
If one self-reflects and ask yourself, what am I doing in my life that's leaking energy? And it's a little bit like low-hanging fruit. Like, what could I stop doing that would give me more power in my life?
Siis kui vaatad peegeldust iseendasse ja saad aru, et mida ma teen siin elus, kus minu energia välja voolab ja mille tegemise ma võib-olla saan lõpetada, et seda energiat ei voolaks minust välja.
We all have habits and patterns that don't serve our God force. And those things in our life are like driving around with the brakes on. It's like you're pushing the gas and the brakes and they don't allow your full power to come through.
Ja meil kõigil on harjumused ja mustrid, mis ei toeta meie jumalikkust. See on justkui selline tunne, et sõidame ringi ja pidur on peal, et me ei ole oma potentsiaali või väega ühenduses.
Often we don't change these things because we're comfortable or we feel like we need extra support or someone to make us do it, like a coach or a teacher or someone else. But we can actually use sex magic to become more the best version of ourselves.
Ja tihti me ei muuda seda, sest meil on mugav ja meil on vaja justkui ekstra toetust, et seda teha, võib-olla mingit coachi või kedagi, aga tegelikult me saame seda seksmaagia abiga teha.
So when I self-assess, if I'm honest, I stay up too late, sometimes on the computer. I eat certain things that I don't want to eat, or maybe I'm watching too much Netflix. These are examples of things that I'm doing that the best version of me probably wouldn't do.
Kui ma olen aus iseendaga, siis ma võib-olla olen vahest liiga kaua üleval või arvuti taga ja söön neid asju, mida ma ei peaks sööma, või vaatan liiga palju Netflixi, et siis need on need kohad, kus energia võib välja voolata.
So self-pleasuring, I can visualize what it's like to eat a healthy diet, to turn my devices off at 9 o'clock in the early time, and I can see myself getting good rest and having a great day. And if I see myself in that best version of my best day, and I bring it into my orgasm, and I just imagine having the best day, I'll have extra charge to actually change those old habits.
Ja kui ma masturbeerides kujutan ette, et ma lülitan kell 9 kõik oma seadmed välja, puhkan hästi, mul on ilus päev ja söön endale kasulikke asju ja näen seda parimat päeva, siis ma saan sealt sellist ekstra toetust enda jaoks, laengut.
And similar with a partner, instead of imagining, for example, that you never fight again or that you're in perfect harmony, you may want to just imagine, oh, that little thing that irritates me about them, I'm just going to appreciate everything about them instead. I'm just going to love the small things about them.
Ja sama on partneriga, kui me kujutame ette, et me soovime harmoonilist suhet ja et meil oleks väga hea kontakt temaga, siis me võime alustada nendest väikestest asjadest, et ma otsustan armastada neid väikseid asju, mida ma märkan.
Good question. Do we have more?
Väga hea küsimus. Kas meil on veel küsimusi? I have a question that do you use the sex magic like somehow every time, or you always do the ritual, or if you have sex, like do you also then manifest something or do the intention? Maybe you don't do the whole ritual every time, but do you like use this energy every time, or I hope you understand.
I do. It's a great question. Translate first.
Et kas ta siis kasutab seda maagiat nagu iga kord, et vahest kui ei tee võib-olla seda pikka rituaali, et kuidas ta siis nagu kasutab seda igapäevaselt võib-olla seksides?
So people often ask me, excuse me for a moment, if you wait 10 minutes, I'll be with you. I have a dear beloved who's come to pick up his sacred flute and he has no idea that I'm online with Estonia right now. So now he knows. So people ask my husband and I, do you always have tantric sex? Mm-hmm. And my answer is, when you're a tantrika, yes, it's always tantric sex, even if it's dark, dirty, quickie. It's still who you are that's having sex.
Ja inimesed küsivad minu käest tihti, et kas te oma abikaasaga kogu aeg siis teete seda tantraseksi. Ja minu vastus on see, et kui sa oled tantrika, et siis ongi alati tantraseks, et ei ole vahe, et kas see on mingi lühike kähkukas või mingi pikk asi.
Now the question, do we always have sex magic, is a little different because I believe that sex is always magical. And sometimes we manifest unintentional things because of where our mind and energy is. We still create magic from that sex act, but it's not conscious. And sometimes it's like conscious sex magic that can, that is very potent.
Ja see küsimus, kas seksmaagia on igapäevaselt kasutatav, on natuke erinev, sest seks iseenesest on maagiline ja me kogu aeg manifesteerime läbi seksi, aga tihtipeale see on alateadlik ja me ei ole teadlikud, mida me manifesteerime ja et me kasutame seda.
So I like to imagine there's a whole continuum, a little bit like a piano, you know, where sometimes sex is like like light flavors, and sometimes like da 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 da, and it's dark and deep, and that we can, as sexual artists or shamans, we can play like here or here the whole spectrum of our sexual expression.
ja mulle meeldib ette kujutada, et klaaver on justkui seks või seks on justkui klaaver, et meil on see kõrged tämbrid ja siis hästi madalad tämbrid ja seksšamaanina me võime kasutada mõlemat, mängida mõlemaga.
So any good musician knows that they have to practice the scales. They have to learn da 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 da, like that helps them cultivate the craft.
Ja iga hea muusik teab, et ta peab kõik nii madala kui kõrge ära õppima, see aitab tal saada selles kunstis osavaks.
When we practice infusing our orgasm with our intention when we self-pleasure, and we practice it enough, it almost becomes second nature and something that we can do very easily.
Kui me praktiseerime orgasmi sulandumist taotlusega, siis see saab nii omaseks, et me teeme seda nii naturaalselt.
And I want to give permission and compassion to how challenging this task is in the beginning.
Ja ma tahan teile anda kaastunnet ja sellist lubamist, et see praktika võib alguses olla väga väljakutsuv.
Oftentimes someone can have a whole elaborate ritual set up and a high intention, and if they're not experienced at it, they get caught up in the raising of the kundalini, and then their desire gets hot and they get all wrapped up in the moment, and it's like, oh, I was thinking about pornography.
Ja vahest, kui meil on hästi kõrged ootused, me üritame hullult oma seda kundalinit käima saada ja midagi nagu teha, et siis me lõpetame sellega, et me mõtleme pornograafia peale.
So be gentle with yourself and keep practicing.
Nii et olge õrnad endaga ja jätkake praktiseerimist.
Another question?
Järgmine küsimus.
Yeah, I would ask again, please. It's so say if I'm in having sex and already orgastic and everything, would you prefer then say it out like loudly, the manifestation, and then just keep like going and wow, you know, just vocally and or how would you? Yeah.
Great question, Tommy. I feel your energy. I'm like, ooh, that sounds fun.
Et hea küsimus Tomilt jälle, et ma sain aru, et see oli siis see, et kui sa seksid ja siis tuleb nüüd see taotlus, et kas sa peaksid selle nagu välja ütlema, oli vist nii kõva häälega.
So what is most authentic to who you are? And there are people who are very verbal and expressive, and that's their nature. And we want to give permission to that. But there are some people that go very deep, very inward, and their nature is to go into the silent chambers of their hearts. And that's where the highest prayers are. It depends on what's your truth and what's your truth in the moment and what's your truth with that partner in that situation.
Ja sa pead saama aru, mis on autentne sulle. Mõned on hästi verbaalsed, mõned on sellised väga sügavale ja vaikusesse südameruumi minejad ja seal ongi kogu see vägi peidus, et mis sinu tõde on sellel hetkel ja selle partneriga.
And I will share that my co-author, Baba Des, one of his like deepest setbacks on his path as a sexual magician is when he spontaneously had an opening and started to, just like Tommy described, it's like, I see the world changing and he had this vision of a new world and he spoke it out loud. His partner contracted and shamed him. And he went 10 years of like not practicing because he was so scared of how powerful he was or how powerful that was. And so the partner couldn't hold space for him. And it really created a disturbance.
Ja ma jagan ühte lugu oma kaasautorist Baba Deshist, kellel oli väga sügav kogemus, kui tal oli hästi suur avanemine ja ta rääkis, et vau, just kõva häälega välja, et ma näen seda, kuidas maailm muutub ja tema partner tõmbus kokku täielikult ja häbistas teda ja sellega Baba Desh siis ei praktiseerinud 10 aastat ja sulges selle enda sisse ära.
Good. Are there any other questions?
Yes, I have one question about being and doing, and also what you just now described, this silent space in the heart. Can you open this more? What it is, this silence that comes, or should it be like, I feel that there is something with the silence and this, it's interesting. I would like to know more about that.
Happy to, after you translate.
Ja et ma küsisin siis selle kohta, et ta rääkis, et mingi vaikuse ruum seal südames tekib ja et kuidas sellega siis on, et kas peaks rohkem nagu tegema või olema.
Osho described valley orgasm. So we all know the peak orgasm, the raising energy that gets to the climax. But there's also these subtle vibrations that come in the, when a wave comes, it peaks, but then it troughs and it peaks and it's like a valley. And there are orgasms that happen in the slowness and in the stillness, and they connect us with the void.
Ja Osho on ka rääkinud nendest oruorgasmidest, mis on hästi peened vibratsioonid, et kui meil laine tuleb, siis ta läheb alati orgu tagasi ja need orgasmid on justkui sihuke tühjusesse minemine, vaikusesse minemine.
Void energy isn't just empty. It's a non-dual space of emptiness and fullness, of not just darkness, it's light and dark. It's it's not just transcendent because it's often descendant, but it's really a beyond the beyond place that happens, and it can often silence us because it's not happening in the dualistic world.
Ja see tühjus ei ole ainult tühjus, vaid see on samal ajal ka hästi täis ja ta ei ole nagu ka ülespoole tõusmine, vaid ta on sissepoole minemine ja see teeb meid tihti hästi vaikseks. Me lähme mingitesse vaiksetesse kohtadesse.
Beautiful. So I'm just feeling the space, and I know there's a lot that's been shared. Unless there's any other questions, perhaps we can kind of harvest and move towards closing.
Ma tunnetan seda ruumi, et päris palju on jagatud ja kui ei ole rohkem küsimusi, siis me võime ennast nii-öelda kokku koguda ja liikuda vaikselt sulgemise poole. Ei ole rohkem küsimusi. I think no questions.
So
everybody needs to read your book.
I would
take a course or something.
I definitely invite you, but not just this book. I want to speak to my new book.
Et ta kindlasti soovitab seda raamatut, aga just tuli tal välja üks uus raamat, ta soovitab pigem seda.
So Sex Shamans, this book has a has these amazing stories of people's awakenings, plus 20 practices, self-practices, group practices towards sexual shamanism.
Selles raamatus on siis lood inimeste ärkamistest ja 20 praktikat seksuaalšamanismist.
So if you feel like, you know, there's a sexual calling for you to learn more alchemy, or you wonder what on your path, what could help awaken you to being like a teacher or a healer, or just curious about teachers or healers, that would be a wonderful book, because it's international. It shows different people from all over the world.
Ja kui sina tunned, et sinul on mingi seksuaalne kutsumus õppida seda alkeemiat ja sa tahad tervendada või saada õpetajaks, et siis seal raamatus on väga palju siukest rahvusvahelist materjali, õpetajate lugusid.
And if you're called to work with me, if you want to stay in touch, I want to invite you to join my online community. I will add a free, it's actually KamalaDevi.com free stuff, but it's a link where you can get a lot of free, you know, videos and samples of my books.
Ja kui sa tahad minuga töötada, siis võid minna minu kodulehele KamalaDevi.com ja seal on väga palju sellist tasuta materjali, saad selle kogukonnaga liituda ja neid vaadata.
So I'll look forward to answering any of your questions there as well.
Ja ma väga olen valmis ka teie küsimustele seal vastama.
Good. It's been my pleasure meeting and working with you. And I wanted to thank you, Peep, for inviting me as well.
Et ma väga nautisin teiega siin koos olemist ja töötamist ja ma tänan Peepu, et ta mind kutsus siia.
Aitäh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Blessings.
you. Blessings. So thank you everyone. Aitäh kõigile and good night for us and have a nice day. And thanks
Sweet
for
dreams.
giving your time. Really rich and good sharings. Thank you. I'm gonna be, you're gonna meet me at your Facebook group.
I look forward to it. Mwah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Leaving meeting.
Okay.
Ciao, ciao.